Now, I'm sorry, but what I'm about to say to you might be a little shocking. Historical reenactors can be pretty awkward sometimes. I know, that the people who play dress up on their weekends to shoot guns at each other in the woods might be a little off is really not what you'd expect, but it's true, and unfortunately, that means that there can be an awful lot of just plain awkward interactions with members of the public all the time, and I should know, I've seen an awful lot of them, and I've been responsible for a few myself. We all have. Now, some of the things that I've heard have been pretty heinous, like weirdly sexual or political or I don't even know what. But maybe at some point we can have like a little Reenactors Anonymous kind of video. That might be fun. But when I say that this video, right, is about the worst thing that a reenactor can ask, I don't mean like literally in a moral sense.
Heil Hitler?
You're not supposed to do that, Daryl.
So much as I'm referring to an incredibly common question that doesn't really help with the reenactor's mission to educate the public. It's something that I see all the time, and what makes it worthy of discussion, I think, is that it doesn't outright appear to be so bad as I believe it to be. In fact, many reenactors will say this thinking that they're being helpful, when in reality, they might be subverting their cause, most especially when it's the very first thing out of their mouths, and it being the simple phrase, "Any questions?" All the time, I see members of the public will walk up to the reenactor, they say, "Hi, welcome to the X or Y camp," and then, "So you have any questions?" We ask it because it seems like an easy and a quick way to demonstrate that we're open and enthusiastic to engage with the public and share the history. That we're there, yes, to answer any questions that they may have, which is of course all true. But in reality, I believe it's a rather off-putting thing to say. Not because it's creepy, mind you, but because, well, how is a person meant to reply to that? Now sure, there will be people out there with some background knowledge about the time period you're portraying, or maybe they see something that attracts their eye. They may even just have a natural curiosity and a desire to have a conversation. It isn't always inherently necessarily a bad way to start a conversation. I'm speaking very broadly here, but the majority of people, they aren't history nerds like you and I. They're coming at this whole thing with really only a very little bit of familiarity, if any at all. And then they get hit with such a broad, open-ended question, well, it's easy in that situation for the mind to just go totally blank unless they've, come up with something in advance and were actively looking for someone to speak with. Now, if you're a reenactor, I know that you've seen or directly experienced all sorts of moments like this where the member of the public will just say, "No thanks." They'll just walk away. Maybe they take a picture or two, but then they just walk away. And then don't get me started on all the people who go like, "Oh, no one cares about history," when we're not really doing enough to engage. That's a whole other conversation. We're going to stay on topic here.
Oh God, I'm even boring when I'm a Nazi.
Classic rubbernecker. Absolutely no interest in military history.
That's a whole other conversation. We're going to stay on topic here. Think about all of those man-on-the-street sort of comedy interviews, right? The one where like the late-night talk show hosts will ask people questions like, "Tell me a country that starts with A," or "Name a woman," and they'll throw a microphone in their face, and all of a sudden the person in question just turns into a stammering buffoon. They can't answer the question even if it's incredibly simple.
For $1, name a woman.
Name a woman?
Yeah.
It's not because they don't know, it's because they're nervous, they're on the spot, they sort of freeze up a little bit, right? Now obviously, the reenactor situation isn't a real one-to-one there, but the basic point is that by just asking any questions, we're being too broad, we're being too open. It doesn't really spark an interest, and most importantly, it doesn't help the person to feel comfortable with speaking with us. Because even if that person does have a question, and this is something that I've covered in a previous video, well, there's a decent shot that they won't feel comfortable with asking it outright for any number of potential reasons. Maybe they think the question is stupid, right? maybe they're embarrassed by it, or they think it's irrelevant, or it's even disrespectful, depending on the context. You know, walking up to a crowd of people all dressed in the same way, who very clearly know each other and are very familiar with what they're talking about, and then just, you know, blurting out a question to them, well, that can be pretty intimidating. And as reenactors, I think that we need to understand how intimidating that can be and appreciate that fact. Again, I made a video all about that dynamic a while back, which I'll link down below. So, okay though, if we've covered that asking any questions isn't, typically speaking, the best way to start a conversation, as we try to work it out of our usual repertoire, well then, what can we replace it with? Well, I think that the quality of questions that we ask the public are directly correlated with the quality and earnestness of the questions that we receive in turn. You and I, as reenactors, we need to be more inquisitive with the public. We need to be more direct with the public, and more important than anything else, we need to be approachable. After you welcome the member of the public to your camp, or to the site, or to the event, well, ask how they're doing, of course. If they seem open to conversation, then ask them what interested them in attending the event, or how they heard about it. And then you could segue into what inspired the event, what makes it so important, why you yourself are taking part in it, and then, well, what the day's events are going to look like. And then through the course of explaining those sorts of immediate concern questions, right? Like what the day's events will be, the firing demonstration. What is a firing demonstration? Right? As you sort of go through those processes, well, there's a good chance that you'll find segues into wider subjects. And through that process, you might find something that sparks a sort of a back and forth conversation. And then along with the potential questions which might follow such, they'll probably feel more comfortable with you to actually ask those questions. But the important thing is you have to sort of come to them at their own level, not just an open-ended question. For example, you might say, oh yeah, so later on I'm going to be taking part in that firing demonstration, and then we're going to have a battle. Have you ever heard like a musket golf before? Have you been to one of these events? Oh yeah, they're really different from a modern day firearm. Would you like me to show you how the musket works? And then boom, there you go. You have an immediate line of interesting communication opened up. Maybe you could say something like, oh, well, yeah, anyways, so we're just finishing putting up our tents over here to camp out for the night. Oh, yeah, we actually are going to be sleeping here overnight. Well, except for Ted over there. He's got a hotel room. Yeah, lucky guy. But, it isn't all bad for us. We each have a tent to ourselves, but, believe it or not, back in the day, they'd get 5 bajillion guys in that thing. Boom, right there, you've opened up a conversation about camp life, about army logistics, the quality of life for the average soldier on the ground versus maybe an officer, or on campaign versus garrison duty, all those sorts of things, right? Perhaps the most common of all of the small talking points, of course, is the weather. Oh yeah, it's a real scorcher today, and yeah, I'm wearing the wool, but it breathes better than you'd think. Boom, you have a conversation about how uniforms were designed, why wool and whatnot. That's a very popular, very common one right there. The point is that small talk is your friend, and especially small talk that are about sort of easily relatable, ground-level questions, right? Things about the event, things about yourselves and about the environment around you and whatnot that are very easy to, proceed from, and making everyone more comfortable, and again, potentially leading to more interesting lines of conversation, right? But stop right there, viewer, because it's time for a quick ad. That's right, this video is sponsored by Exter. Hello, stranger. I'm here to harass you with history. Okay. You see, the shortland pattern musket was first introduced in the mid-18th century, superseding the longland pattern. Sir, I feel as though you're not paying attention to me. Look, man, I was just running to the store. What, are you looking for money or something? I mean, I guess I can... Egad, sir! What sort of sorry excuse for a wallet is that? It's, My wallet? No, sir. This will never do. You need to replace that ratty old bifold at once with the Exter wallet. Is this meant to be historical? Why, it's the wallet of the future! With its quick card access button, you can immediately fan out up to 12 cards, securely kept within its sleek confines. The wallet stores plenty of cash as well, just here on the interior, and if you include this handy little finder card with it, well, you'll never lose the thing, you just have to track it down on your phone. Alright, I guess that's pretty nifty. Why, it sure is. And look here, Exter wallets come in all sorts of different colors, patterns, and styles, from Napa black to navy blue, even one with little smiley faces on it. Exter also has even slimmer card holders, as well as key cases, even backpacks. They really do offer an extraordinary variety of goods. Well, how can I get my hands on all this here stuff? Visit the link in the description down below, and during Extra's Valentine's Day sale from now until February 14th, you can get up to 30% off of your order. Plus, use my code BrandonF at checkout, and you can unlock even more savings. Well, gee, mister, thanks so much for the recommendation. Are you gonna go now? So as I was saying about the short land, thank you to Exter for sponsoring this video. Now let's return to the topic. The most important thing above all else, and by far, is that however this conversation happens with the public, whether it naturally drifts to something interesting, whether they ask you a question outright, or whether you, in fact, just outright ask them a random question, nothing inherently wrong with being blunt about, asking just a random question to keep things going and provide educational opportunities and all that, but however it happens, whatever happens, the single most important thing, and for many of us the most difficult thing, is that you keep a social tab on the conversation. You gotta keep your finger to the pulse and only really push to continue the conversation. Only offer those additional points to talk about. Only offer up new information. Only, be blunt about asking questions, like I said before. Only ever if they are interested in having a conversation. This is something, again, that I know from firsthand experience that a lot of us really struggle with. But do not force conversation. Do not force someone to be interested in the history by just rambling and ranting to them endlessly. If you find out that you're doing a whole lot of talking and they aren't saying anything back, if they're just looking around and not at you, if they're sort of whispering to each other, well, they may not be interested. And that's fine. This stuff isn't for everyone. And, maybe they just want to attend the event as a little family outing, bring the kids to the reenactments and just have a nice day with the family, whatever, with pleasant weather. You can bring the kids to the event, but you can't make them learn anything, right? All that you can do as a reenactor is to help provide a fun, interesting, accessible, and welcoming educational experience for those who decide to engage with it. That's also why it's so important to be careful to gauge what you're talking about by the interests and especially the ages of your audience. But that's probably a topic for a whole other day. But in short, right, you are there to inspire interest. You're not there to force it. So don't harass people. Come to them at their own level. Engage with the content that they're interested, not that you're interested in. And if you can't answer a particular question, well, there's no harm in saying, you know what, I'm really not sure, but, maybe one of my colleagues can help you out if you ask around. Something else that you can do, even if the person seems, totally disinterested in anything historical, is to try and plant an idea in their head. Something that might make them look at the event in a certain light throughout the day, or make them wonder about something, and it might even inspire a question or a bit of curiosity later on, even if they don't immediately realize that it was because you put a little thought in their head. Whether that's something that you talk about directly, if they are interested in having that conversation. For example, you can tell someone to keep an eye out for the different colors of uniforms that different people are wearing. Or, if they're not interested at all and you're just sort of seeing them on their way, or a very, very broad point, like you're just thanking them for coming out and supporting the event because, their visitorship is what makes the event possible, and you think it's a good way to teach people the value of history and about the sacrifices of the past and how they impact our lives today. Boom. Right there. You don't have to have a conversation with someone at all, and you just put an interesting, educational, sort of thought-provoking idea in their mind as they walk on by you. At the end of the day, of course, we're all, for the most part, volunteers. We're only human. So, if you can't think of a really interesting way to segue from, oh yeah, we came from Maine to attend the event, into talking about the Saratoga campaign, well, that's okay. If you really can't seem to connect with someone, if you can't plant those little ideas in their head, that's totally fine. You can't be expected to convert everyone that you encounter into a raving history nerd like we are. And at the end of the day, just by being present in the event and just taking part in it, well, inherently, you're helping to build up the bigger picture that makes it all possible. But all the same, try to think of better things that you can end your greeting with than, any questions? For example, even just a simple, hey, thanks for coming out and supporting the site. Have a great weekend. That can go a really long way. And if you still want to make sure that they know they can ask questions at any time that they would like, well, you can say something more like, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. And you can even end it with a little joke, oh, we all love to talk more than we should, or we'll probably tell you more than you ever wanted to know, anything that can help to break up the ice a little bit. But just don't end it with something that's so open-ended that it's putting the impetus on the guest, the member of the public, to come to you with their question. Instead, try and have it be more welcoming that you're there for them and that they're not expected to do anything that they don't feel able to, right? And in this case, come up with a genius and insightful historical question just off the top of their head. And I think that when you ask something like, any questions? It's kind of what that's doing. At the end of the day, above all else, whether you agree or disagree with anything that I've said here today, the most important thing to remember, I feel like I've said that multiple times in this video, but this is really the most important thing to remember, is that as reenactors, we are there for the public just as much, if not more so, as we are for each other. And as such, it is our responsibility as participants in these events to do everything we can to help foster a social environment that encourages curiosity and inspires conversation. Like I said before, we are building events that are fun, that are interesting, accessible, and welcoming to the public. Because at the end of the day, the visitor, are they going to remember every little detail that you said to them about how old guns work? No, they probably won't, nor will they necessarily care that much about the difference between a long land and a short land pattern, right? But you know what? They will remember if they felt engaged in the conversation. They will remember if they felt heard and welcomed, and with all that, they might just walk away thinking that history is more interesting than they thought before. And if you can accomplish that, providing these people, whatever their walk of life, whatever their interest, whatever their background, with an enjoyable and a memorable experience, so much so that, maybe they even go off and do a little research of their own, well, then you've just made a new historian. Or at least you might have made a new history buff. And I think that's a pretty big win. So thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and maybe it gave you a few ideas on how you might better engage with the public at these events, which, is something that we can all always strive to improve. In particular, of course, special thanks are owed to the Native Oaks membership on Patreon, without whose generosity none of my work would be possible, be it a video like this, or an upcoming historical fiction novel, The Corpse War of 1793. If you'd like to have a more direct hand in supporting that project specifically, you'll find the Kickstarter link down below. And as always, my dear viewer, I am, and I shall remain, your most humble and obedient of servants.